Welcome to The Master Plan, a property podcast. I'm Rebecca Shackleton from Polka Dot Property.
And I'm Nikita Jenkin from Scouted Recruitment.
Nikita and I have come together to do this podcast with a goal of unpicking the complexities and the nuances of the property industry. We want to do that by interviewing guests who will offer insights on the industry and their career journeys.
We're really excited to have you on this journey with us, and we're going to have a lot of fun along the way.
Nikita and I are excited to have Illan Samuel with us this morning. Illan is the founder and managing director of Samuel Property, a family-owned Melbourne-based property developer specialising in the high-end multi-residential sector. In just over a decade, the company has quickly emerged as one of Melbourne's most progressive new contributors to the contemporary residential space. Illan is passionate about property, and this shows in his hands-on approach across all aspects of the development process. He hopes to leave a lasting impression on the Melbourne property landscape, producing high-quality buildings that can be enjoyed for a lifetime.
Welcome, my friend.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, Illan, so talk to me. Tell us a bit about you and how you got to be here. What was your first role in property, or what's your story? Give us a bit of a summary.
So I started off, I guess, as most people do, doing a business property degree at RMIT, not knowing necessarily exactly what I wanted to do, and I guess gravitated towards the valuation stream. It seemed like the most credible or sturdy qualification I could get from that degree. And the first job I had, third year uni, had to do a placement. I remember it. I actually went overseas for a couple of months, and I came back and all the jobs were really gone. So I landed.
But did you have a good time overseas?
I had a great time.
Well, that's the most important thing.
Where'd you go?
I remember we were sort of backpacking through Asia, and as I said, I came back and probably a lot of the more highly sought after jobs were taken. I hadn't thought that through quite, but I was able to land myself a position at the City of Stonington, working as a valuer's assistant, it was called then. And look, it was a great landing spot. I can't say it was a great synergy with me in terms of I was pretty keen to go, and everyone there was slow.
I was going to say it must be a little bit different in your office to what you would have experienced at the City of Stonington.
Yeah, I mean, I can
day.
always remember, 5 o'clock being told, "What are you doing? Leave! You're making us look bad."
You don't strike me as a council worker.
No. So I did my sort of 10 or so months and then moved over to the private sector and completed my degree. And I guess I worked as a valuer for almost 8 years.
That's a long time in valuations. Most people can't handle more than maybe a year or two.
Yeah, it's a shame that is the case, but you're right. It definitely is the case. A lot of people do move on, and people that I worked with at the time are no longer as valuers. They're still in the industry. I still keep my qualification as a valuer on the chance that everything goes wrong and maybe I have to be back there one day. But and I'm a member, and I'm actually on the Victorian State Committee at the Institute as well. So I'm still keep a close eye on the valuation profession and have a lot of respect for those that have made it into long careers.
Do you have any pieces of advice for young people in vals? Obviously, in a property degree, there's not many places you can go after, and a lot of people do go into valuations. What would you say to those?
I think just to really immerse yourself in as many different types of property as you can. So sometimes they can get pigeonholed as an assistant or a newly qualified valuer, sort of paired up with quite a senior person that specialises in a certain type of valuations, and that really limits your exposure to the market. If you can get as much experience as you can, and obviously try to grow your network and really try to understand that there's more to it than, say, bank work. There's a lot of consultancy work that can add a lot of value. But a lot of people do find themselves doing a lot of that churn work, which is really banking related.
That's the feedback I get of candidates wanting to get out of vals, is that they say, I can't keep doing the same thing over and over. So is it an industry issue that they get siloed into an asset, or is it the person themselves has to sort of move around and ask for greater diversity in their role?
Look, it's a bit of both. It depends on the size of the firm, but I think a lot of the larger firms do like to have people siloed into particular types because they get good at it, and that lowers the risk of what you're doing, because it's a pretty risky profession, all things considered. If you get it wrong, there's ramifications because people are relying on that valuation in terms of how much money they'll lend, and often you're not aware of all the different circumstances, or you're relying on information from other people that you then form your opinion on, and that information could be wrong. So
But as you said, I guess it's a really good opportunity for someone starting out to get exposure to different asset classes and different types of properties and all of those kind of things.
Yeah, I think I liken it to, I'll probably use a lot of metaphors today, but, if you want to get fit, you go to the gym a lot, right? You just don't go once.
What do you mean?
You don't?
Sorry. And so
I went skiing on the weekend and my first time ever, and I'm now an Olympic skier.
Yeah. So if you just do the one thing, or if you don't do it very often, you're not going to be great at it, is what I'm trying to say. So I think if you're pigeonholed or you're not really getting exposure to a lot of different things, it'll make it harder, because if you do have aspirations to get out of the valuation industry, there's a whole nother world out there in terms of property.
Maybe perseverance as well for people in vals, if they're in it and haven't been in it for very long and are feeling, sort of bored or it's quite monotonous, persevering. And obviously that helped you. After 8 years, it's made you a better property developer, having that 8 years experience.
I didn't think 8 years was a long time. I certainly thought I could have made it quite a long career, and I quite enjoyed it. I think I was reasonably good at it, and I look at some of the people that have stayed in, and I think they're quite successful, and I think they live, it's quite, I wouldn't say comfortable, but they do quite well, and they, I think some of the pressures of other parts of the industry, like development, are far greater, the risks and the different kind of impacts it can have. So I see it as a really solid option that a lot of people might discount that they shouldn't. And I understand that can be quite stressful, but probably some people just need to understand how to manage the client, which might be a banker or internally. And that's a life skill anyway in any job you do. So I always hear that people, move on quite quickly. At the time, I thought I was probably the odd one doing that. A lot of people were really digging in and really enjoying valuations, or they were going to agency, which was sort of hit, make or break, where valuations was just solid. Like you really, as long as you're qualified and you knew how to do the work, you could keep advancing and doing more and making more. And I actually I had quite sort of high aspirations to get into the determination side, which was more of I'll say it's a bit inappropriate, but it's 100% accurate for the time, an old boys club where it was
that's property, isn't it?
Well, this particular section of the market was very dominated by 5 to 10 people that were doing all the rental determination work. And I was actually sort of young, up and coming, doing a lot of rental submission work to them. So essentially they would get a submission from either party, and then as the umpire or the determining valuer make the decision. And there were sort of a few approaches from people to sort of say, do you want to kind of understudy and get into that? And when you get appointed to those positions, you sort of write your own number as to what you want to be paid to do the job, as long as you're appointed. So it would have been quite lucrative, but it just, I had other things calling.
Other aspirations. So what was next after your life as a valuer?
Yeah, so I made the decision to it wasn't actually so much I made the decision. I sort of got tapped on the shoulder. My family has a building materials business, and it was sort of at a time when my parents were sort of like, you're either going to join us or you're not. And I kind of thought, well, good. I have to really make a big decision here. But at the same time, I didn't want to leave the property industry. And they said, well, we're happy for you to do both. As in, come work in this business in more of a, a business or operational setting, and you can sort of plug in anywhere you want whilst you cut your teeth on the development side that you're interested in, and we'll support you. I thought that sounds great. I did decide to call the business the family surname, and that was quite contentious, and it still has.
But what a great surname! What a perfect branding opportunity.
I think I just was too cheap to pay for a marketer to come up with something better. But I thought, it's just me, and this makes sense. I didn't really think about it growing into something bigger and bigger. So I stuck with it, and I could count the number of times. I can't count the number on both hands. The amount of times my mum said, I want you to change it. I don't like it.
Oh, really?
Because they're more private, and as things get bigger, or their friends might ask them, and they don't really want to kind of talk about that. But to me, it has always made the most sense, because it is essentially a family business, and it is essentially me. And I put my name to it, and I put my, I stand by the projects. And even that came up as recently as yesterday. We had a council consultation meeting with, I think it was 40 angry objectors turned up, and they were really querying.
What about?
or development application.
Okay.
Yeah. And well, we had 75, so only 40 turned up. That was good. But yeah, they were really questioning, who I am and what we're going to do and the quality of the product. And I said to them, well, I put my name.
They don't have Instagram. They don't have LinkedIn. They don't have
probably not.
I think
research into this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that all that should matter more. And I've made a focus from day one to have that front and center in terms of not hiding as a developer and not having like what they call a micro brand, like we just pop out of nowhere and disappear. And it looks good, but just tick the box.
You need to be able to have some authentic storytelling in market to communicate what you're doing and what you're all about.
So I've tried to build that over a long time to get trust, but that takes time. I even say with any development, I like to go a fair bit early to sort of build a bit of a digital footprint online, so it doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Like you can see things that this was talked about 10 months ago or whatever. There's a little bit of crumbs on the internet, and then all of a sudden people go, "That's valid, that's real." Like,
but as a director, you're also you're the face of the brand as well. You're very vocal and you're out there.
I mean, by default,
it's a great thing.
That is by default, but at the same time, I'm
like a face
I'm
to the name.
And passionate to talk, and I guess I've been fortunate enough to have a few opportunities like today, being invited, or in other settings. I probably, I don't hide. Like I do like to be in the conversation. I've sort of started a few times. I've been I get as many positive as negative things happen, in LinkedIn, but that's how I get benefit out of a platform like that in terms of joining in the conversation, rather than sort of being one of those, everybody has a friend that's got an Instagram account that's never made a post, but they're always liking things. And you're like, well, that's a bit creepy. I like to be the person that I'm giving to get, and I'm an active participant in the market. So if somebody...
But once again, it's authenticity, and it's seeing the person behind the development and knowing that there's a person and a human and like a dad behind this development. It's not a corporation. It's not a faceless, committee.
Yeah, that is, we sort of sit somewhere in between the local developer that isn't visible, and they might be a lawyer or a doctor, and they're doing this on the side, and this is like a passion project for them. They want to it's like somebody who decides to just renovate their house, because how hard can it be?
Property development's easy.
That's, when the market's good, they say the cab drivers are all developers and flipping land blocks. And then I guess you've got people like myself in the middle that we're career, professional, it's not a hobby, it's all we do. All day, every day, the good, the bad, everything. And then at the other end, you have the large, listed companies or corporations that are somewhat faceless, but for whatever reason, I think they get a lot of ticks in the marketplace. It's like, well, Mirvac, like we trust them. Like,
but who is Mirvac?
Well,
I mean, it's 500 people, but who is Mirvac?
I think their projects stand for themselves, and that's what I think Samuel will do as well. I think when you've got runs on the ground and you've got, really strong brand, but then you've got product that backs up the brand story, that's how you can be authentic in what you're delivering to the market.
We've had good and bad experiences doing exactly that. I still will always do it, but you give people a lot of access, and it just depends. Sometimes people's expectations versus reality. We really try to marry those two so that you know what you're getting. We've sort of done a really honest job, I think, with our latest project, Louise, where we could certainly bling it out and it'd be crazy, but that's not what people would get. So we sort of said, like somebody might have said, "Oh, why doesn't the stone go down the side?" It's like, well, because then we'd have to sell it for more, and like you might not be able to afford it. And let's just be honest about what we all need and want, and how we can get from here to there. And I think a lot of people go, "Okay, like I'll pay that." That's being a bit more raw and honest. And that's even come from others in the industry. They've walked through our display and they've gone, it's like nothing special, but it's selling because people go, I'm comfortable. Like if you walk
this is real, and this is what I'm going to get for my money. So I think when you go into a display home and it's completely upgraded, and then you speak to the rep and they go, well, that's an upgrade, that's an upgrade, and that's an upgrade. You don't really understand what you're getting. Whereas I think if you're displaying what you're actually going to get, that's a really great.
And I think also people need to feel comfortable that they can afford it. They're not like, I think a lot of people don't like to be overindulgent, as in they might here and there, but people are worried about what other people think and say. It's very, that's that Instagram lifestyle now. So if you went out and you bought this unbelievable apartment, like some people might be self-conscious about it. Some might love it and splash it everywhere, but we just want to make the process as easy as possible to get to the other side. So it's always easy to kind of spec something up, but you can't really spec it down. Or if
Yeah.
you do, people feel like they're just like, oh, I don't want like the bad version of that. I'd rather just not have it.
Do you think this is probably one of the biggest differentiators between you and your competitors, is that you essentially put yourself in the shoes of your customer?
Yeah. We've been doing that for a while. I think you have to start everything with the end user in mind, like everything you do. Like, would I live here? It's actually funny enough, we talked about valuations at the beginning. One of my sort of first senior valuers, sort of quasi-mentors that I worked with, at the end of every job, we'd go out and look at a property, say, if I was assisting him in the early days. And at the end, he'd always, without a doubt, stand on the other side of the road from the property and just look back at it. Just like if you've ever seen that Colorbond ad where it looks at the roof and they're sort of admiring the
proud
roof.
dad.
Oh, I love my roof. And he would always stand back and look at the property, and I'd be saying, let's go. Well, what are you doing? Like, we've been here, we've done all the work.
We've got to lunch.
And he'd say, I just like to look at it and just think about the property and what is almost like, how does it make me feel? But also, like, do I like it or not? Because
would I buy it? Would I live here?
And I think it's the same thing when we're looking at locations or we're looking at specs or we're looking at layouts and designs. If you understand that market, and we're Melbourne based, and I've lived in Melbourne my whole life, so it's basically my team, and a lot of the people that we work with are the same in terms of architects and and we just kind of think about, who would want to be here and what. I think if you're just too copycat focused or you're making decisions based on a spreadsheet, you're going to get it wrong, right? And if somebody doesn't want what you're doing, then you're not doing it. There's no point doing it. Like development, it's problem solving. That's the whole job, problem solving. So if you're not actually solving a problem for anybody, you're not actually doing anything. Like if you're giving them a product they don't need, great.
Which is probably a lot of properties and a lot of developments out there.
I think that's a copy-paste mentality, and understanding whether the last project in that area was actually successful or it worked, or just sort of going off what almost like a tick box, like, oh, it's the right suburb, and therefore you do this. Right. And a lot of the time I think decisions can be made by people who aren't actually financially invested into the development. So that's almost like whoever's the developer isn't actually understanding, and they're relying on an architect or an agent to basically make these decisions like, oh, we think the apartment should be this size, or we think you should do townhouses here. And they don't actually have any skin in the game outside of their fees, which they're going to get how much, depending on how far the job progresses. But ultimately, like, the developer has to basically make those decisions and live and die by it. And we've gotten it right and we've gotten it wrong. Like, it happens.
So how do you, because you talk about people-centric and always considering the end user, how do you engage with your customer as you're going through that kind of planning and design process?
Oh, it's I think a lot of the time you sort of know early on. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but
there's definitely a gut feel about
who the market's
going to be.
I guess we're looking at what's sell. Like, I'm sort of always on. So I'm a sponge for information for property. Like, it's not work for me to read an article or pick up a paper and flick through ads. I think I'm a sort of a natural connector. I find myself talking to a lot of people and quite flowingly talking about the market, and not just chit chat, but really try to understand. And that creates connections that you can then speak to and get information from. And that's okay. Like, I don't like to be transactional, but it's good to sort of be on. So constantly following what's working. I think sometimes you don't know and you just have to go for it. And we've done that on projects where we, I remember Turner in Glen Iris, we were 115 square metre average apartments, quite high spec, never been done like that before at the time. The market was essentially you do 65, 75 square metre apartments, and if someone's got a lot of money, they might put two together. But you don't start with such large apartments. And we didn't. I said, no, I think that's actually what people want, and not everybody wants to do the work to put it together, and they just want to see it's done. And we were selling like $2 million an hour launch weekend.
Wow.
We'd sold out in 10 weeks, 40 million. Like, it moved. Sometimes it's good to zig when others zag. Like, if you're doing the exact same thing, you're not solving that problem. So, again, Louise, just off St Kilda Road, we average 80 square metre apartments in that St Kilda Road precinct. They are a lot larger, the spec is a lot higher, and the prices are a lot higher. And developers, valuers, people in the industry a lot of the time talk rate per square meters. But what they often forget is that a buyer is just like, I've got 2 million, I've got 1 million. They're not sitting there analysing sales against other apartments. And I mean, some do, don't get me wrong, some do, but they're not kind of
only if they work in property, probably.
Yeah, I know. We get a couple every so often. They're like sitting there doing the maths, like, great, thanks, we know, but we don't care.
Yeah.
Like, that's our price. Thanks for telling us that we're 10% more expensive. Like, but you still want us. Like, you're telling us that for a reason.
Yeah, you're sitting here.
So a lot of it is, I think, in a way, almost psychology, just thinking about the other person's journey and what they're doing and what they like, and to make it as easy as possible. But really, again, that problem solving. So are we creating apartments that are size that people still want to be in this area? And I always say the journey starts from the location. So again, if you're people-centric or person-centric and you think about the journey that they'll take on a property, that if you go into Domain, Real Estate, any of the websites, the first thing you type, it's like 4 search entry points you have to make to actually find something. The first thing you put in is the location, right? So if you get the location wrong, forget it. You're like, you gotta fish where the fish are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you don't get the location right, like in an area that people want product, you're off. And then the next thing is the product type. So if you can do a diverse product, at Louise we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments. So we can't really get that wrong, right? And the other thing that attracted me to a project like Louise is if you think back to the dark days of 2020 or 21, where you had these bubbles, 5, 10, whatever kilometre radiuses. If you actually look at the radiuses of certain sites, you think about how much you can capture. You can capture a whole lot from St Kilda Road. Like, you're basically hitting into Richmond, Port Melbourne, St Kilda, Windsor, Paran. Like, your catchment is really great, and it's very dense. So again, if you're sort of like a upside down funnel, or actually not upside down, the funnel, the funnel is wide, right? And that's great for marketing. It's great for clicks, but that just gives you a lot more people looking, right? So back to realestate.com or whatever, get the location right, get the product right. And then again, it's a bit of a choose your adventure, right? So people don't know what's out there and they don't know what the price is. They're the ones putting in the price. It's like, imagine walking into Gucci and saying, I want a dress and I want to spend it for $500. And they're like, well, we don't have it. But that's how property works. You put in the price and then it gives you the results. And if you line it up, then you're going to have success. But if you don't match it up, then you're going to be sitting there. Like, we've got apartments in Toorak and people put in inquiries and like, it's totally a mismatch. And again, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's essentially, champagne taste, beer budget. It doesn't fit. So when you can start to line all those up, well, that's why a project's going to be successful, because you're giving them what they want, and there's no disconnect.
Yeah, and your project marketing is unconventional. You have taken a bit of a different pathway to other developers, and it's really worked very well. And do you think that's why? Because you're really thinking about the audience first and foremost and going, who are these people? What can they afford? How are we going to talk to them? And then using things like your reels and all of the different kind of tactics that you're using beyond the realestate.com or the Domain or the traditional property channels. Can you talk about that a little bit, just in terms of your strategy? Because it is, I think a lot of our listeners would be really interested in your approach.
Well, I'm passionate about my projects, and so I want to see them in the marketplace in the best light. And I think there's a couple of aspects to marketing. One is to get sales. The other is to promote the project in the right light for those that want to work on it. And I think that's often forgotten. So we're always selling, right? We're selling to try to get sales, of course, but I'm selling to try to get a lender, right? Somebody wants to believe in the project. I'm trying to sell to get a builder. Like, we want to build Louise. This is a great project. They see benefit in partnering with us. And then obviously I'm talking to the industry and I'm trying to engage and say, like, we do cool stuff too, and we want respect in our place in the conversation in terms of marketing. And I think you've got to align with a creative and a project marketing, so agency and creative that believe in the vision. But then you have to have a vision. For me, I think I said before, I like to zig when others zag. I feel like copy paste or copycat industry won't get you results. It's a crowded space. And if I feel like I've seen it before, it's not really going to resonate with me. And sometimes a project allows you to be more creative. So our project in Brighton Willow, it's beautiful, but it's Brighton, it's quiet, and it just can't take that big energy. It's not going to fit well with the Missy Elliott soundtrack at the back.
Yeah. I think you could make it work.
Look,
anyone could.
At this point in time, I'm willing to try anything, actually.
There was a video this morning I saw of a $1 million drug bust in America, and the police department put out a video using some rapper's 1 milli song to say we just, as their marketing video about their crimes, spree and finding the bad guys.
Well, content is king, and I think you want it to spread like wildfire. The real estate listing portals have a place; they're established, but the results they provide and the costs are really much higher nowadays. And that requires developers and marketers and agents to find avenues at lower costs. Now, those leads may not be as good, but they can be very targeted. So we haven't done this by chance. We have content creation agency that works in with a creative agency that works in with a market, essentially a sales agency that has a digital marketing focus, and then we have a digital marketing company that places the ads out and optimizes them constantly. So we're constantly churning that to get, like, if you're walking to Prahran Market and you open Instagram, I want to serve you an ad. And we want to basically capture you. And we've actually said, or I've said, like, I'm happy to be that creepy company that just keeps following you around because I don't mind.
A little bit of stalking.
Yeah, I don't mind. Now, that would upset some
instead
buyers.
of the iPhone listening, it's Samuel Properties listening to your conversation.
Yeah,
I know where you're going.
A lot of people say, I keep seeing Louise. Well, that's the purpose.
Yeah.
We're happy to just keep throwing the money to try to see what sticks.
But regardless of all these different players in your factory line, they're all consistently telling a story and they're working together to tell your story. And people buy with emotion. People buy the story and then justify later.
I think it comes from it's not one of their ideas. It's everybody's on board. And a lot of the time, if I get asked what does a developer do or how do you do a development, or someone says, "Oh, so you're the builder?" I say, "No, I'm not the builder." "Oh, so you're the agent?" "No, I'm not the agent." "What are you?"
You're the umbrella.
The way I kind of explain it is that we're the conductor of the orchestra.
Yes.
So the conductor makes the music sound great, and I don't play any instruments, but I know how to make the instruments play good music.
But the symphony is not a symphony without the violin and the cello and the flute and the conductor keeping them all together.
You need a lot more pieces in the orchestra these days.
Yeah, I couldn't think of any other instruments.
No. But there are a lot of people that we work with more so than the early days. You would just, an agent and a creative company that you basically started and finished, and then off you went. Now it's constant touch points and updating to keep fresh.
But this probably leads into relationships as well. You as the development manager, you know exactly where every single one of your consultants blends and contributes into your story. You're not just, giving orders or being told. You're, again, conducting.
It's a two-way street. Like, we have to listen. I don't ever pretend that I know how to design a building better than an architect. Likewise, I don't say to the creative agency, "Oh, you should change these colours and this and that." Like, we have open conversations, but we certainly don't think that we can do other people's jobs.
When you say we, you are a very small team. There is only 3 of you, which actually people might be surprised. How do you manage all of these projects and all, everything that's going on, just the 3 of you?
I mean, I think we manage pretty easily. The guys, if they listen to this, will hate me, but
they'll definitely listen to this. I promise.
I feel like there's more time to do more work. Probably if I had more money, I'd be buying more things and doing more things. Like, I think it's just about, like, I sometimes say it's a bit like, like sports, being match fit. So, being able to just go out there and play the game, right? You've got to be ready to go, in condition. So we don't sort of, take days or weeks off. We're pretty on it, and I like to think if you can do something, you should always do it straight away. So, I'm a bit, I don't know what the right term is, but like I like a clean inbox. Is it OCD?
A tight ship?
I like to get things done. If it can be done, just do it. And if it's with us, then it's not with them. And then that creates excuses, and productivity in the marketplace at the moment, I think, is at an all-time low in terms of my career and working with others. Work from home is flexible and it's great, but I think nobody could argue that in some industries and respects, this may be controversial, it's affected productivity. And we're really having to push hard to get things done and to get things done on the timeframes that we want. So
I'm with you. I don't like to scroll in my inbox. If I can scroll, I need to go through and sort out my emails.
I don't understand how everything I have in mind goes to a folder and goes to a certain place and it's clean. And people who open and have 50 emails, like I can't handle
I don't
that.
mind how you do it as long as you do it. I think for me, I like to keep things moving and I think you get better at what you do over time as well. And if you work with the same people. Yeah, I think we work a lot at like I said, it's problem solving, right? So if you start a new project and you've got a new engineer and they're difficult to manage, then that's going to take more of your time and resource and to get the right outcomes. When you work with people, and we don't always work with the same people, but when you work with people that you've done before and you trust, and also you get the right fit. So a lot of time people are sort of trying to work with a company that might not necessarily be the right fit for the project. And so you're sort of trying to get their attention, but they don't really care about, say, your little townhouse project. They're doing a tower in the city and you might have a junior and which is fine, everyone starts somewhere, but it's the wrong fit. We might work with companies that are more aligned with what we're doing and we'll deal with the principals at a meeting and they'll be on emails and they have the interest too. And I always say, like, guys, a lot of them work for fixed fees, right? It's like, so do you want to do this job over 4 months and get paid the same amount of money over 4 months? Or should we smash it out in 3 months and you get paid the same amount in 3 months? How good does that sound? Yeah, let's go. Because that's the reality, right? Like we're going to still pay, but time in development is everything. You can't get it back.
Time kills.
And and so for us, even though people say, oh, you've got plenty of time, it's like, well, I'd rather just have it done.
Yeah. So talking about being so generous with your time with other people, if you could go back to 20-year-old Illan, what advice would you give him?
Well, I would have said try to get mentors and speak to more people. I think, I was definitely naive or perhaps stupid to just think that you can get some money into a development, and what I understood or what I knew from uni or what I was learning at the time was all accurate. There's theory and there's practical, and they're quite different. And even a lot of people in the industry don't quite know. It's sort of like one of those things until you've actually walked a mile, you don't fully appreciate all the things that happen. And in development, it's not a straight line. It's not. There's always new things that you have to encounter and work through. So the more time you can spend with people who have kind of done that process, the better. And I probably just didn't, and I somewhat regret it. And that's part of why I do kind of put time into others. I've done mentoring programs. A bit embarrassing. I thought I was going to get mentored, but I was the senior mentor. And I was like, oh, wow, this is happening. I was like, oh, my God.
Did you just sit there looking at each other for a while until you worked that out?
I'm 41, far out. How am I the senior mentor? But it was really interesting to learn from, a 20 and a 30-year-old. And, at times I just wanted to shake the 20-year-old and be like, wake up. It's go time. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
Don't waste the next 5 years. That'll set yourself up. But then at the same time, similar with the 30-year-old, I was like, hey, just lower your eyes. You got to grind this part out and really establish yourself. And then you can take some chances and, don't wait till you're 50. But I'm just saying, I get it, but just you want to be the boss. You got to slow down. Unless you're just going to, just quit and take a risk like I did, which again, looking back, would not recommend.
Would you do anything differently in running your own development business now after 15 years? What would you change in that aspect?
Great question.
Because a lot of people want to run their own show.
I think you don't learn from always being right. So I've made mistakes and I've really learned from the mistakes far more than I've learned from being right. And there's a bit of I think in development there's a bit of a habit that when you're right, you're just like, yep, cool, we were right, and keep going. And so you expect to always be right. And when you're wrong, people really lament it and can get them really down. And like I said, I haven't had many mentors, but I have had the chance to obviously meet with a few people along the way. And, one said to me, you're going to get 1 in 10 wrong, just straight up. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, you're going to lose money, 1 in 10 developments. Make sure it's not more than that. And I was like, well, lose money. And they're like, yeah, you're going to make no money and you might lose your equity. which might sound crazy to people. Like, wait, so I'm going to do all this work and I'm going to not even make any money, but I'm actually going to lose the money that I put in. And he's like, yeah, 100%, and you need to be comfortable with that. And it was pretty confronting, but it's great advice because it's true.
What are you most proud of? Project or business or life?
Oh, I think, I can hold my head up high that I think I've done some really nice projects that I won't drive past and kind of, cover my face. I'm still happy to go back and look at them. They're all, fit for purpose and for the right place at the right time. I think we have been good to work with and fair and reasonable with everybody and honest. So that's something that I pride myself as a person and as a business owner. I haven't burnt people or anything like that. And then in terms of projects, I'm pretty excited about the ones coming up. It's kind of they're the new shiny toys to a degree, and also it's a really change of scale, like to go from 3-4 level apartment buildings to now doing something 16 levels is quite a big jump and it's really consuming. But then also mixing it up, we're doing, 70 townhouses on the peninsula, which is, again, a quite big change of pace. But, yeah, projects that I've been really proud of. I mentioned Turner before. That was a huge success. It really, to me, financially, mental well-being, everything worked. It was a good market, but I don't think I could ever do a development more efficiently than that.
What do you think are the biggest challenges in the market today for developers in apartments and sort of mid-density?
Yeah, projects? I think probably most developers would say finding projects that financially make sense. So we've seen over the last couple of years land values stay consistent, the same. So nobody wants to sell their land for less. They're not making any more land. Certainly land that's development zoned appropriate for development in areas that you want to do a development. So land is staying the same price. In that same period of time, you've had construction prices go up 20, 25%, and they'll probably remain steady. They won't continue to grow, is my opinion, but they'll probably remain static from this point. So that price has gone up. And then you have sale values that haven't gone up to that same extent, so that's a problem. And then you have interest rates that have probably doubled. And when I talk about doubled, like a developer doesn't borrow money the same as a mum and dad who's buying a house. It's a totally different financial stack of money. So the interest rates and the construction costs being up, the land being the same, and then the sales rates haven't grown, they've either remained the same or they've modestly grown, you can't get the return. And you can't do a development just because you want to. Like, if it doesn't make money, no one will support you in terms of a lender. And unless you're paying cash and you're just going to do it, like, that's hard. It's not going to happen. There'd be almost no one doing that. So it all kind of comes back to the banks. And if you can't get the risk to return right, you're not going to find a site. And I think that's an issue. People are finding it hard to find sites. I think what needs to happen in the market is sales rates have to go up. That's not going to be easy as people continually talk about affordability.
Affordability, and I think confidence is a real challenge as well, that the market feels, that it's given some of the things that have happened in the property market.
Yeah.
It's a much more difficult sales journey now for people to go on and to actually build that confidence in your consumer that this is what you're buying into, this is who we are, we're going to build it, we're going to actually deliver this thing. But that's a real challenge.
No, absolutely, I agree. And I take close notice of the rest of the market. So if a builder goes broke, that's like, even if I'm not working with them, that's a really bad thing. If a developer, if something's delayed, if there's an issue, like, I want it to be good for everybody because I want that general sentiment to be great. And the way that the market is in terms of, I guess, the government incentives and taxes, there isn't really any or much. So what are the reasons that you would buy off the plan? It might be because you want to, it's sort of like, I kind of say it's like afterpay. It's not, because you don't get it now, but you lock it in at the price now. And maybe if the price goes up and it's built in 2 years, that's great. But also some people just want to kind of go, that's done. I'm not going to be renting in 2 years' time. I've bought this property, I've paid a deposit, and I can now start thinking about saving more money. So for some people, they love the kind of lock it in, plan ahead, and they don't like to go on the roller coaster of going to auctions every weekend and like, maybe I'll buy it, maybe I won't. Get my lawyer to look at a contract, get a broker or a banker to look at it, and then they just get outbid by 10 grand, like start all over again. So property is kind of nice off the plan because you're in control of the journey. You can pick when you go to the display, what you buy, and you've got a good idea as to when it's going to be finished.
So it's on your terms almost.
It's on your terms, and that's what we've been promoting.
Yeah.
I guess there's an element of customization, which some people do enjoy. You know, we had a guy who was 6'10" once, and we raised the shower head for him higher. And you do things,
6'10".
Yeah, you do things for people that they would have.
Basketball court in.
Yeah, well, I should have recruited him, but you could, if you were buying a property that was already built, you'd have to go make that change yourself. So some people do have intrinsic things that they want, and we can work with them to do it. So that's definitely a benefit. And then I guess you've got say on sort of finishes and the like. But from a financial perspective, it's hard, and it also involves people trust. I think often we've seen it with our projects on resale, they're sold for more, which really gives me confidence that somebody buying is going to make money, and we want them to make money because we certainly price them as aggressively as we can for the buyer. So I'm not trying to make any more money than I need to make the project financially viable, but I do need to make a return. And I need to be honest about that with buyers and the market, because you don't begrudge the coffee shop that makes $1 on each coffee. If they don't make $1, they can't make more coffees the next day. If we don't make money, we can't keep going either. So there's a big stigma that developers are greedy. We're just business people. We're just trying to make a particular return. I think if a lot of people saw what the real return was, they would be shocked at sometimes how low it is. And if they amortized based on the number of years on a development, they'd say, well, I wouldn't do that. That's crazy.
Why are we all doing this?
Like it took you 4 years to make $500,000. That's not really that much money given the amount of money that you put out and the risks associated. So I think that's where, again, to answer your question, Nikita, was well, banks really kind of control what happens, because if they don't think the risk to return is there, then they won't support a development. And that makes it hard for developers to actually go buy things with confidence. And then other issues really are probably the uncertainty on planning, and the timing is really hard.
On that subject of banks, and I think it incorporates a lot of the things we've been speaking about, government regulation, ticking boxes, losing money. I want to talk about a subject, ESG. Yeah. So, Beck, you were recently on a panel for UDIA. I'm now on one of the UDIA diversity committees. And Illan, we were speaking earlier before we jumped in this room. You recently came from an ESG meeting, or
I was interviewed.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about that? What happened?
First time I've been interviewed in a job interview setting for a while, but it's obviously here to stay, and that's a good thing. And it's something that we embody in our developments in terms of our sustainability initiatives. So we are very green, and I always talk about social license. So do you have the ability to say what you're saying? And so I don't think I have a green license intrinsically. I'm not a green champion warrior, but the projects are. Me as a person, I just do the right thing, right? But in this instance, in this interview yesterday, it was a lender, and they were trying to understand our credentials and I guess how much we're taking that on board, and that would factor into their willingness to lend money or the rate that they would lend money. And that's not a one-off isolated incident. That seems to be quite across that lending space, that they want to make sure that the money is going to businesses and to developments that are sustainable front and centre, and not just doing the minimum.
But it's not just that they want that. There's actually penalties as well if you don't
there
comply.
Is. Yeah, we'll comply. Always
Speaking
comply.
of losing money, you need to comply or else.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that, and but I see that as a positive. Sometimes if things don't get pushed along, they don't happen. So that's obviously something they're passionate about. And as I said, I don't think I have that social license that I'm passionate about it, but I'm a willing participant, right? Like if you give me 2 bins and I'm holding something that's recyclable, I put it in the right bin. I certainly don't print things unnecessarily. We do the right thing. And in this instance, that's something that is a priority to them. So we will do it. But I hadn't really thought about it from a business setting so much because we are a small team.
Yeah.
Just the practicalities of having ESG policies and initiatives in place.
Difficult to be diverse if you've got a team of 3.
It's hard, but also, ESG means so much more than just green. And to me, that's what it means. But yeah, there is so much more.
As a developer, what are some of the things that you need to be focusing on, or what are some of the variables that you need to control in regards to that ESG piece?
Yeah, I mean, from an actual project basis, we always will work with a sustainability consultant, and we always try to put in, I guess, more than the minimum. So an example, we did a development application in Phillip Island last year, and there's no requirements for ESG in that council, but we did it anyway because we recognised that council and the community wanted to see those sort of
the community, the customer at the end wants to buy.
I'm trolling all the Facebook groups trying to read what they're saying about us.
Yeah,
and I can see that. So we put in those sustainability items, and that was a real tick. Same thing down in Dramana. People want to know. So we're not like in that instance. The rating is a BESS score, BESS, and
what does that stand for?
I don't know. See, that's my social license.
You know?
I don't know. But essentially,
we need to look this up.
Essentially, I think that the pass is 50, right? And we're 71. So we're like design excellence. So we've gone over and above. We've got,
there's so many different ways of measuring sustainability.
Yeah, it's a scorecard. It's a
all
scorecard.
Of the scorecards, and there's not just one. And everyone always talks about the NATHERS, NAT, HDR, and but that's one small part of a much bigger picture.
Yeah. So we're doing what we can in the developments. Does it add value? Does it add value in terms of dollars? Probably not. Does it add value to the end user? Absolutely. In terms of if we swing it back to housing affordability, if your house is running more efficiently, if you've got a more efficient dishwasher or taps or appliances, that's going to lower your operating costs.
Saves you money.
Likewise, if you've got in Dramana, we've got a sustainability zone which has got organics and compost, right? So not everybody in their townhouse would have space for that, right? Or they'd want to do it. But if we've got a community zone where people can do that, and they can plant their own vegetables and the like, and I hope it doesn't come off sounding like idealist. Like we fully hope that people join in on that whenever it happens.
Most people want to do the right thing, and I think most people want to participate with a project or that's going to be good for the planet at the end of the day. Like people are really a lot more conscious about that. I know, myself and my husband definitely look at all of those things when we're looking at buying property.
Yeah.
And that was a deciding factor when we bought an apartment off the plan a few years ago.
Yeah. We qualify at Louise for green home loans.
Yeah.
So
that's
again,
good. That's fantastic.
If that's something that you want, that's a bank that'll give you a discount because it's a sustainable property, and that then goes into their bucket. Yeah. So
do you have a dog area though? Like, are you a dog friendly apartment?
Nikita's always a good prospect when we do these because she'll probably buy an apartment in Louise after this.
Well, we do have a dog wash bay in the basement.
Well, there you go. Sign me up. I'm not about making my own vegetables. I can't cook.
No, but
I'm all about the dog.
It's quite funny because to me, I looked at it and I thought to myself, so we've got this development that's opposite Albert Park Lake and it's opposite Faulkner Park.
Yeah.
And these are great. I'm a runner, so I like to run. So these are great places to run. But obviously when you run, you see people walking their dogs all the time. And in winter, the dogs' feet get dirty. And then if you go back to a practical sense and you go, well, all these apartments, 100 apartments, like 8 of them have bathtubs. So like what do the other people do? Like how do you wash your dog's feet if you don't have a bathtub? In the shower, but that's painful. So we'll put like a tub in the basement so you can wash your dog's feet and then take it upstairs.
You're a thinker. I like it.
So yeah, problem solving again. But then, okay, if you think that's like ESG and good vibes, great. But I was just trying to solve a problem, and I thought, well, that's a tub, that's a water point. If we design it early, it's super easy to do. If someone tries to do it, 5 years' time when the building's built, it's probably impossible to get water there and
to retrofit.
Yeah.
But it's really understanding your end user, which is, again, at the start, what you're really talking about, like who are the people that are going to live in the building? What are some of their what are the challenges? They might have a dog that needs to be washed. So how do we solve that?
Yeah, a lot of people, do live with dogs in apartments.
Loads
it's pretty common. And again, like to take in the amenity of the area, which is phenomenal. So again, it's just probably spending time in an area. Like early days, trying to understand areas, like you just kind of people watch, which I like to do anyway. But you go to a cafe and sort of see what's happening. I remember I did that in 10 years ago in Blackburn. I went and had a sandwich, and I couldn't believe how expensive the sandwich was. And I was like, okay, this place is probably going places. People are dropping $12 on a sandwich without a worry in the world. Yeah. Again, 10 years ago. And same thing in Phillip Island. Like I think it was like $15 a sandwich now. And I was like, this is a good
I just paid
test.
$17 for a wrap at Mount Hotham on the weekend.
That's the snow, though. I think that's a little bit.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
but
$8 for a can of
Again, like if we're just trying to think about it, like if people are in an area and they've got a disposable income and they're happily spending it, it probably tells you like a story, or at least I'm selling myself that it does, that this is a change in the area.
Yeah.
If everybody's
I
not buying anything.
I couldn't agree more. I've always said to my team, if we're working on a new project, immerse yourself in the suburb.
Yeah.
Go and get the train out there. Go and sit at a cafe. Do your groceries there. Actually understand the people that are in and around the suburb.
Yeah.
And that is the best. You get so much more from that than you will spending $100,000 on a market research piece to tell you who the market is.
But this relates
Actually go
back
out
to
there.
your strategy in general. And when we had Nick, we were talking about the marketing campaigns that are always the grandparents in the field, and it's been done. It actually has no relevance to the actual buyer and the end user and how those people are going to use that area, which is what a lot of developers, I think, miss that mark, and they think we've covered the marketing piece, but it's not actually
Understanding
a researched, thought about. Like, to me, you just put a lot of thought into everything, and it's doing very well for you.
There's a lot of risk. We have to really not make those mistakes. So I don't really see it as work or thought. I'm just kind of just doing it because that's what you probably should do. I don't, like, if you're going to make an investment.
You should, but not everyone does. I think that's the point.
Put it this way, like a development is like a relationship, a really intense relationship for like 4 years, say on average. So you don't you wouldn't be in a relationship unless you wanted to be in a relationship, or you certainly shouldn't be in one if you don't want to be there. That's my opinion. So
it's very good
if you're going to be there. And if you like somebody, you want to know everything about them and you want to make them happy and all that sort of stuff. So it's no different in a development that you would take the effort and the time to really be it. And the good thing about the development is you can see the end, right? Or maybe it's a good thing, but I know, I've had projects, like we did one in Hampton. I went there for all the time for 3 years.
Yeah.
And in the lead up to it, I'm sitting on Hampton Street and I'm looking at all the people and getting a really good idea as to what our buyers like and don't like. And that's before we even buy, but certainly once we bought, we're really on it. I've been back to Hampton really since. There's no need to me. That relationship
finished.
Different
life.
But I put my all into that relationship and it really worked for me in that setting, right? Where if it's like sometimes if there's no end, people – they lose the spark. Like, oh, you used to buy me flowers and, now you do nothing. I know that with the project.
Have you been, someone said that to you before?
Maybe, yeah. I know that we can really put our all into it and kind of immerse. And also things change over time. So you've got a finite kind of period where you can really go like, okay, I think this is what this moment in time looks like in Hampton. In 10 years, it could be different, but right now we don't have to think about 10 years ahead. We just need to knock this out for the next 3-4 years, and this is what's happening right now. Areas don't change overnight. They change, but it takes time. So the projects that we did in Blackburn in 2012, 2013, I wouldn't do that project today. It wouldn't be the same type of project, right? But then it was totally right for the area, the spec, the size, all that sort of stuff. But that's 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
Speaking of right now and things that are probably relevant and topical, I went and saw Barbie, the movie, last night, and I know you're taking your girls to see that on the weekend.
Haven't seen it, but as a marketer, could talk about the marketing
the budget.
for another hour.
Right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
My question is, you're a single dad with 2 girls.
Yep.
Do you have any, and for anyone who hasn't seen Barbie or goes to see it, they'll probably understand why I'm going on this tangent on this subject, but do you have any thoughts about raising girls in when you yourself are involved in a very male-dominated industry? And further to that, would you want them to go into property? Do you have visions for that? You're a girl dad, so talk to us about that, but a very, in a boys' club environment, but you're a girl dad.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully I'm not bored. But they're very excited that I'm taking them, so that's definitely a big tick for me. I know this whole diversity piece, I said before, I don't really look at men, women. It's just everyone's everybody,
people.
Right? So I would hate to think that, they're 10 and 7. I'd hate to think in 10, 15 years that there's any roadblocks or any issues. sometimes when this stuff comes up, I kind of roll my eyes, like not in this setting, but where people are sort of really acknowledging it, and I'm like, why are you even talking about it? It's not a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be part of the conversation. It should just be like accepted.
But
to
historically,
me.
It has been. I think that's.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that. But if we keep thinking that way, then we need to, like in my mind, we need to move away from that. This is just what it is. Like we're all the same, men, women. We can all do the same jobs. There's no differentiation. We've all got equal rights. There should be no roadblocks for my girls to anything they want to do. Happy if they want to follow their footsteps, and if I'm still around, and I can kind of, hey, how's that project going? I'm on the boat. Let me know. But they, that's not a stereotype. But
call me tomorrow.
yeah, whatever it might be. But they'll just do whatever they want to do. I'm just trying to give them the, my parenting principles is probably not that dissimilar to property. Is to have a growth mindset. So just be open minded to everything, because if you're closed minded, you'll be too much friction and too much hesitation. Like we can't just do things the way we did it 20 years ago. You have to think about like anyone can teach anybody anything, and you're not always right, and you need to there's new ways of doing things that could always be better. So that growth mindset, and then I guess just resilience. So it may be difficult for somebody I don't know, will it be difficult for them because they're female? Has my journey been difficult? Like I'm Jewish, does that play into anything? I don't think so. Would it? Could it? But you need to be resilient and just kind of get through it. Like it's not always going to be first take perfect. But if you're resilient, I think anyone will find a way and be successful. Like they'll get the job that they want, or they'll get the client they want. And we miss out on things all the time. And it's like, well, how do you do to pick yourself back up again? It's that level of resilience. So, my sort of three things, one I haven't said yet, but it's growth mindset, resilience, and then moderation. So everything's good to an extent. Too much of anything is no good for the body or the mind. And, if they want to be involved, that's good. If they don't, that's also fine. I asked my daughter, actually, I didn't ask her. She got asked at a school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said me. And I was like,
oh, that's so cute.
And I was like, but answer the question. So, the other one said she wants to be a vlogger. So, and I was like,
she might be able to take over your digital marketing.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it'll all change as to things that they get interested over time. But my biggest thing is to give them that foundation, that building blocks to just enjoy learning. And I think also try to set a good example, seeing, dad works hard. So I'm physically present. And
I was going to ask that. Do you have any comments on raising children and the dad role, a father role when you are running a business? Property is not a 9 to 5.
Yeah, look, it's very...
A lot of men struggle with that and being present with their children.
Yeah, look, it's very different to what it was for me in my, growing up. My dad was very much like work. And my mum did all the sort of family stuff, and my dad was always pretty full on high energy. And then come the weekend, it was like a different person, because I guess back then, emails aren't chasing you and you can just sort of switch off. I'm like, Dad's great. He's so nice on the weekends. Yeah. Takes me to basketball games. Now you've obviously got to balance it. So, I mean, I'm very aware and respectful. Have to run a very tight diary in terms of the time, but I set boundaries. So, I don't want to be, in the kitchen making dinner for them on a call. Like, I want to enjoy that time I have with them. You only get to be a dad or a mum at that point in time once. Like, the kids are only 10 and 7 once, and you blink and it goes. And every moment is important, like when they're whatever age, but it goes. So you want to enjoy that time. And, it can mean that you've got to sort of work back later, and you take that sacrifice.
I guess the last question we have is, what does the future hold for Samuel?
Look, we've got some...
And Illan.
Yeah, no, thanks. I don't like to think too far ahead. I think that's dangerous because, again, the market moves so quickly. But we've got some exciting projects. So, I mentioned Louise, Hallie down in Dramana. We've got an office building in Hawthorne East. So some pretty exciting, diverse things that as we've sort of grown. But yeah, in terms of a company, I'm not looking to change too much. I think I found a nice little sweet spot in terms of the size of projects, the size of the team. I don't personally have aspirations to, be doing 1,000 apartment projects and the like. I think there's a...
Because you do what you do good. There's
I was about to say, I think there's a subtleness or a sophistication about just knowing your place. I mentioned about hiring people and not wanting to be in the middle. I made a big effort to kind of jump up from that sort of smaller development, which, look, they're not small, but there's certainly a more crowded space where we mentioned those micro brands can play and people can come in and out, where there might be realistically sort of anywhere between $10 and $50 million projects, to sort of jump into a space that's probably more 70 to 120, which is a big number to me, but something that I'm comfortable that we can add the value and we can do the things the way we want to do it and spend the money to get the return. So I'm enjoying being in that space. I think the market has like a real second wind that's going to come, that's going to make people really push and wish they had pushed earlier to have projects. Like we do have things in our pipeline because you can't turn the switch quickly. So I'm hopefully just looking forward to doing those projects, finding more that are similar, and I guess more positivity in the market, because I'm a pretty positive person, but it's hard on some days when there's so much negativity around there.
It's hard lately. It's been difficult.
So to have more of that constant swell will be really good, because I think all of a sudden that'll turn to that productivity piece where people will be happy going back to work because they're putting out less fires and they're actually getting things done.
Getting results, which is
and that's how you get sort of that gratification, satisfaction.
Thank you so much for your time with us this morning, Illan, and being so generous with it. And it's been an absolute pleasure. We've loved the conversation and
Yeah, no, thank you both. I appreciate it. It's always nice to connect and great topics. So I hope the listeners enjoy.
All right, we'll see you later.
Thanks for listening. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you also to our sponsors, Polka Dot Property, a small but mighty marketing consultancy connecting people to place.
And Scouted, your go-to for property and construction recruitment. To scout is to seek, to be scouted is to be found.
If you'd like to get involved, you can reach out to Nikita and I at themasterplanpodcast@gmail.com.
Make sure to like, share and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
See you next time.
Bye.